Much of the world urbanization is occurring in the city's hinterland, as you can see here, the greater Antananarivo metropolitan area in Madagascar. Urbanization pressure is extending into these rice plains, but infrastructure development is not keeping up with this rapid and mostly unplanned changes, leading to an increased number of urban dwellers living in underserviced areas. Many communities, however, compensate by relying on local waterways and green areas to meet basic needs. And these blue and green infrastructure are unfortunately not really being taken into account in the planning of such cities. This is exactly where this project wants to contribute by identifying transformation pathways of such urbanized, flood-prone tropical landscapes towards more livable and climate-resilient areas. The project is led by Michiel van Breugel, an ecologist of Singapore, and myself, a landscape planner from ETH Zurich. We are working in a highly interdisciplinary team, and as highlighted by the reviewers, we are well embedded in the topics of Module C and provide a clear concretization of the ambition goals of linking disciplines raised by the FCL Global Program. We are also linked to other projects in the program, such as the project of Sasha Mentz on dense and green cities, and with the project of Brian Adey working on responsive infrastructures. Finally, we have already made important contacts to agencies like the planning agencies in Madagascar and Singapore. Representatives in both cities expressed explicit support for this project. The main goals of the project are organized around 3 areas of knowledge generation. In a first step, we aim at understanding what are the principal landscape elements and patterns that help support climate resilience and livable tropical cities. We know, from example, the Natural Capital Project in Singapore that ecosystem services are essential. But we do not know yet which plant communities, landscape pattern, and topology can support such a resilient transformation. We hypothesize that through an iterative loop between designers, scientists, and engineers, we'll be able to create innovative blue-green infrastructure systems, and that these cost-effective infrastructure will help achieve multiple functions for residents. This is part of the second goal. In the third goal, we will tackle the trade-offs between these services. There is a huge amount of claims for the remaining green areas in these cities, and this will require a deliberative decision-making and social learning process, which we will try to investigate. We will work in 2 case studies, one in Madagascar and one in Singapore. First, we will develop the iterative loop between design, science, engineering, and governance in Madagascar, and then we will test the loop in Singapore. While the 2 locations differ strongly in terms of their socioeconomic characteristics, they have important climate and cultural similarities. Both are tropical cities in which green areas are under strong population pressure, with important consequences for ecosystem functions and services. Results of the 2 case study will finally be compared with other flood design projects, which in turn will feed into urban ecological theories on the role of green-blue infrastructure in supporting livelihoods. The team is anchored in both case study areas, with Michiel working on services and functions of urban greenery and trees in Singapore, and myself working in Madagascar on topics of land use changes.
The project will take a transdisciplinary, iterative approach to allow feedback loops between the design process and information about how the designed environment functions. Figure 1 on this slide summarizes the feedbacks between the various work packages, emphasizing the importance of joining these disciplines. Work package 1 will develop first cross-scale designs of the urbanized flood-prone landscapes in Madagascar, and then of various mixed urban green areas within Singapore. This provides input to work package 2.1, which will quantify the flood risk of the different designs, explicitly considering current available infrastructures and various climate change scenarios. Work package 2.2 will inform the designs of work package 1 by assessing urban ecosystem services under each design. In work package 3, which takes a central role in the iterative process, we will identify the governance arrangements and agents of change that drive and hinder transformations of these urbanized, flood-prone landscapes. This will be done, on one hand, for institutional analysis and by assessing social networks, agency and power of actors. On the other hand, we will model the pathway using participatory agent-based modeling. Finally, in Work Package 4, we will validate the entire process in Singapore and identify the main characteristics of landscape designs and processes that are applicable in both case studies. Important to note here is that we will work with point clouds that will be used as a common language across all work packages. They are modified by designs, used as basis for informing the design in Work Package 2, and used as a basis for the ABM. Because they can be printed in 3D, they will also be used as a basis for communication and learning in Work Package 4 in forms of physical models from the neighborhood to the regional scale. Both reviewers highlighted the highly ambitious goals, but one of the reviewers was not fully convinced that the described research activities would allow us to meet all of our goals. Most notably, he noted that he was not sure about why we selected to focus on assessing the performance of the design with ecosystem services and particularly a flood model. Two ongoing studies, Future Cities Lab 2 on the left of the slide and the Natural Capital Singapore on the right, have demonstrated that it's crucial to explicitly integrate ecosystem services in urban planning and development. We will build on these two projects in our choice of what ecosystem services to focus on. In both cities, we extensively assessed which ecosystem services were in demand by the residents and developed mapping approaches for the most important of them. What was striking is that in both case studies, important areas for the provisioning of demanded ecosystem services were also the areas that were under strongest pressure of urban development. In order to secure these open areas, one thus needs to make these services more explicit to planners and designers and include them in development plans. In addition, the reviewer was not sure how the knowledge developed in Madagascar could be used in Singapore. Specifically, the reviewer asked about why we want to map plant species and the extent to which information on shift in plant species from more to less urban and affected agricultural areas in Madagascar, and how they would be relevant in the context of highly urbanized and human-designed park landscapes of Singapore. Until now, ecosystem and service assessments, as you saw before and see in the upper part of the slide, are mostly based on land use changes and how this drives changes in vegetation cover. Yet, ecological research has demonstrated that provision of ecosystem services and system resilience not only depends on how much green there is, but also on the diversity and types of trees, crops, and other plants. Key here is to focus on the functional characteristics or traits of common plant species in specific environments. Functional traits can be the whole plant characteristics, such as allometric size relationships, but also physiological traits such as potential photosynthesis. These traits define how plants interact with their environment and thus support species choice in landscape design and, when scaled up, help to predict how vegetation provides ecosystem services in an urban context. A focus on trait environment associations allows for generalizations from Madagascar to Singapore. The proposed project will also be one of the first that integrates approaches from the emerging fields of plant functional traits and point clouds in the context of urban planning and design. You see here, below the slide, first tests in integrating vegetation into point clouds in Singapore. The point clouds provide a way to assess both the characteristics of the plants and thus its potential for ecosystem service provisioning, while simultaneously also providing information for flood modeling and also microclimate regulation. In summary, the project will go beyond developing informed designs of resilient green-blue infrastructures in the two tropical cities. We will also identify principles of designing and planning urbanized flood-prone landscapes, capitalizing on nature by comparing the results in both case studies. Analyze actors' claims of green areas in the hinterlands to support sustainable urban transformation. Build local and international networks for social learning on transformation hinterlands around tropical cities. And finally, but I think very importantly, build individual and institutional capacity for learning tandems in the north and in the south.